Oh man, I hate Mondays.
Nah, man, it's Tuesday.
Wait. What day is it?
You know what day it is? Tuesday. Brewsday, Tuesday.
Oh, fuck yeah. It's time for Brewsday Tuesday, brought to you by the Cellar and Six Pack Store. Here's DreZ and Big Nate.
Wham bam, thank you, ma'am. Brewsday Tuesday is here. Brought to you by the Southern Restaurant and Six Pack Store right there in downtown Blacksburg. My name is DreZ. Big Nate's in the hizzy as well.
Yeah,
How are
buddy.
you? Do good. So you want to? I just realized. Do we? We don't need the light. Still, it's bright enough later in the day
Yeah.
now that I guess we can get away.
I'm
with
kind of
that
a
now.
big fan of that, except for when you're putting your toddler to bed and they're arguing with you. The sun's still up. Yeah, I mean that's a fair point, but
Yeah.
still, you need to go to bed because it's like 9 o'clock.
This time of year, it is probably hard to win that argument as the summer solstice rapidly approaching. I know the festival's coming up this weekend in downtown Blacksburg. That'll be a lot of fun. But I had myself a little fun just this past weekend, and it involved the canoe trip. I think we did tease it and mentioned it and talked about it a little bit here and there. So yeah, 3 days on the New River. Me, my buddy Pete, my buddy Siegel. Siegel's the one that's done it a few times before, so he kind of, we're kind of following his lead. And the rule was you couldn't bring any food. You had to live off what you catch. So a lot of fishing, and we survived. But first things first, 3-day canoe trip. So we put in, the plan was to leave bright and early. They all came down Thursday night, and we all met up and try to get everything situated and ready. And we were going to hit the road bright and early Friday morning and put in Ivanhoe. So I don't know if you know where Ivanhoe is or where that is on the stretch, like along the trail and the river and whatnot. But so we were going to go putting in Ivanhoe and going down. We're going to get out in Hiwassee and Alasonia. So, and I did calculate it because I was able to, I just was when I could remember. So it's fairly accurate. I would start my watch so I
Yeah.
can kind of get an idea of how long we were on the river and going each day. So overall, it was just about 25 miles on the river. 3 days. So the last day was kind of like a half day, if that. We were just paddling at that point just because we didn't really need fish. We had food waiting for us at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. So how much beer is needed for a 3-day
It's the most important
canoe trip?
question.
Well, I'm wondering where you stood with it.
3 people.
Per person. I mean, we didn't bring.
I'm just trying to do the math.
You packed your own cooler. Everybody had our own canoe and our own camping stuff, coolers and everything.
In my heyday, it would take me like 2 days to do a case of PBR. So maybe a case and a half, and I'm talking case like 24 pack. I don't know if I was planning a trip like that. The other thing is like I would want to plan, no obligations. We're not doing anything that necessarily requires being horribly productive. I'd say about a case and a half per person.
So our thinking was, and you're probably about there with what I wrote. So first things first, I just popped Southern Tier's Hoptomic Rush Tropical IPA. Southern Tier was one of the 15 packs, variety 15 packs, and there was a couple beers in there that I hadn't had. So I was like, all right, I'll grab that one. I did something similar with another pack that will open here soon. So not a case, but also not quite even a half a case. So I got those two, and then I actually, thanks to you, I had a 6-pack of PBR Tall Boys, which I was thinking about. So I got I have just a basic ass canoe. It doesn't have a seat back to it or whatever. So I was like, I'm going to need something. So I actually went and found online. It's essentially, it's meant for a stadium seat, bleachers. So it's got like the little hooks that you can just secure it to, had a little cup holder, a little pocket. And so I was like, this will work great. The cup holder was a bit smaller than I had hoped for. So I was able to wedge in one of my like kind of metal Yeti koozies, and the can fits pretty snug. So it's like it goes right in there. So it's kind of a hard grip. So I was like, oh, the tall boys will be perfect. It'll be so much easier to grab them. So I was really wanting to bring tall beers, but I didn't want to get fancy, good, powder cans that we're used to, because I'm not going to be able to pour it in a glass. I'm not really going to get to fully.
It's not optimum.
And God forbid some river water splashes up in there or whatever, some PBRs, I won't be heartbroken. But so I had the 6 that you got me. And then I also found a 12-pack of tall boys of PBRs. So that's what I brought. My buddy Pete, he opted for the liquor equivalent. He wasn't drinking much beer. He did bring some Bud Heavy. I think just like a 12-pack of Bud Heavy and a 12-pack of, what was the other beer he was drinking? Can't remember. But he brought a bottle of, or I think it was I guess it was a liter of Jameson and a liter of vodka. He was doing like the cocktail thing.
All right.
And then my other buddy, he brought his plan. It was like a case today. He got a 30-pack of Coors, and then he had, I think, maybe 3 or 4 12-packs of Trulies. He likes to drink the Trulies, but you got to have beer, because that's what's going to really fill you up if we're not catching fish.
But your buddy with the liquor had the right idea though, because you gotta paddle all that weight.
Yeah, but
I mean, I guess
you want some weight in the front, because you need to even out the canoe.
That's true. All right.
So I feel like the beer was the right idea, because guess what? Out of the 3 of us, he was the only one that like really felt hungry. He was telling me on day 2, there was a couple hours I could only think about food. I, believe it or not, never felt hungry. It's probably because I was drinking these big old heavy IPA beers that are pretty filling and stuff. That being said, I did get a couple texts from him yesterday. Pete lost 10 pounds. Siegel lost 7 pounds, and I somehow gained 5, not eating all weekend.
Well, so I do wonder, because you've been spending the past few years getting really healthy and really into shape. Have they been doing the same? Because that's probably a much higher caloric intake than you're used to.
Yeah, actually, no, probably definitely not Pete. He admitted, he was like, man, next time if we do this again next year, I need to work out a bit, because I think it was a bit more daunting. But Siegel, he works he does a lot of heavy lifting and stuff with work, so I think he just naturally is a bit more fit and whatnot. But so no food. I did cook us up a nice big breakfast before we set out on Friday, obviously, but we put in an Ivanhoe, and we're going down, popping the beers, feeling good, casting out the lines. Everybody's got 2 poles. You need to have a backup, and you might want, like, Pete's big thing, he was going to be trolling, so he was going to have one just kind of sitting, like kind of pulling behind. I think maybe 3 or 4 hours in, Pete catches the first fish, a largemouth bass, decent size. So at that point, then it was like the monkey off the back. We knew we at least had some food to eat that night. So that was huge. Kept fishing. That was the only food we ended up with that night. Nobody else caught anything. So we had the one fish to eat that first night. We ended up camping out. We popped over. I guess reserved a campground at Foster Falls, and there's an island across from it that they used to use campgrounds for, but I guess they didn't do that anymore. So
probably
that's where Siegel said Siegel had stayed there, whatever, before. So he was like, let's check that out. So, but before we could get to the island, you got to go down Foster Falls, which by far was the most action, I guess you would say, throughout the entire river. I mean, there was definitely numerous spots where you're going down a bit, you got to be on, but with Foster Falls, it's probably 5 or 6 just sort of drops. And it's not like, maybe there's 2 or 3 and then there's more, but one of them, I mean, maybe even a couple of them are probably at least 3 feet or so. I remember Siegel said that the nose of his canoe went under coming down one of them. I wish I had that privilege, because I got kind of sideways, and I didn't tip the canoe, but I took on enough water and it was going that way. So I actually made the decision to bail out. I just bailed out because I didn't want it to totally tip over. So I got wet. My phone got wet. which kind of sucked. It's still working, but I don't know if you can see. It's got like a bunch of condensation in the cameras. So my camera,
Picture taking game
my
is-
front camera is quite cloudy and terrible. So I only had good pictures for the first day before that happened. Luckily, that was like right at the end. So then, my stuff did get wet, which kind of sucked, but I was prepared for that. I had a lot of stuff in, dry bags and other bags and whatnot. But so it took on a bunch of water. We pull over to the island. It's kind of sandy, which is, at first I was like, this sucks because it's just going to be sand and dirty everywhere. But quickly learned it was nice and comfortable. Set up a fire. And yeah, eventually, we grill up that fish. We were allowed to bring seasoning. And Pete brought a bag of lemons because that's juice. So that's not food.
Lemon.
You can do liquids, or that's fine. Liquids are obviously fine. So the fish tasted pretty damn good. We were up pretty late, later than we should have been. I think we were up drinking and whatnot till 2:30 or so. And that was rough because the next day I was indeed hungover.
Well, and not only like hangover, I don't know about you, but when I camp, I'm someone who like when I'm sleeping, the room has to be like a fridge. When you camp, those tents do not breathe well no matter what you do. And I feel like that's a situation where I'm going to be up as soon as the sun starts to hit that tent.
Well, it wasn't hot. It was cold. I mean, the
Oh.
first night it was, I don't remember. I didn't have the wherewithal to check my actual like phone or watch for the temperature, but the forecast was saying it was going to be like 41 was the low that night. So it was pretty chilly at night. In fact, I got a pretty interesting story for how chilly it got the second night. We'll leave the second night and day for the second round. But in fact, I just realized I don't even think you talked about your beer. What did you
No,
popped
I was
the
so
Southern
excited for
Tier?
the trip. I've got the Southern Tier Brewing Company Juice Jolt Extra Juicy IPA. Comes with a warning. Caution, extra juicy, 6.8% ABV. And it's definitely a juice jolt.
Yeah,
The smell hit me in the face immediately.
You can go ahead and tap that because out of all the beers that I had all weekend, that one stood out to me the most because it tastes very, very unique and unlike all the rest of them.
It's not, I wouldn't say it tastes anything like an IPA. The fact that it's extra juicy, there's no haze or anything like it. I don't know if they're using fruit flavoring or what they're doing. I think it's delicious. I think if you're on a trip, you could drink a lot of these and probably crush them and not realize that you've just had a bunch of 6.8 ABV beers.
So
and you need that fish.
Tell me if it tastes, because this is what I thought. Fruit punch.
Yes, Kool-Aid fruit.
It
or
tastes
high C, the red in the big jug.
It tastes like fruit punch.
And that's what it smells like too.
And
So probably definitely
that's
fake
not what I
fruit.
want from my beer,
Oh,
frankly. And you said you could drink a lot of those. I drank at least 2, I think, because I had them, but I was trying to pawn them off because I was not a huge fan of that one. Don't let me sway your Untapped score, which, by the way, go ahead and you can do that.
It's not an IPA by any stretch of the imagination. So I think it's gonna, or at least not the flavor characteristic. I think it would lose points there. I like it. I like the label. I would definitely drink a bunch of these. That's been something I've kind of been interested with. New Belgium started doing it with their Juice Force and their Fruit Force IPA. I've been a big fan.
I kind of felt the same about that one.
Yeah.
I guess it is the Juice Force, I think is what it's called.
If you're a traditional beer drinker, I don't know that you're necessarily going to love it. I do. I'll give this a 4.75.
Wow. I think I might have given it a 3.5. I don't know. I was not a huge fan of that one. The Hoptomic Rush, though, the tropical IPA, this is a breath of fresh air compared to those, in my opinion. This one, if I remember what else, the other stuff in this variety pack, it had the regular IPA, the 2X or the double IPA that they have, and I can't quite recall what the other one was, but this one was one of the betters of the bunch, I would say. The double IPA, the other box that I had also had double IPAs. I was kind of torn on those because usually I was down to drink it at the beginning because I was like, all right, so on day 1, I'm like, all right, let's get this going. Let's start feeling good. Day 2, I was hungover and I was like, all right, well, let's hopefully start feeling good. But at that point, I was on an empty stomach. So I wasn't like, I didn't want to bring anything too big ABV wise. I
Now-
mean, these are 6.5, 6.8. Like, what is this?
Did you
one?
bring any Gatorade or pickle juice?
I brought a couple Gatorades. I wish I had thought to bring pickle juice. I'm
That's
going to
the
make a
cure-all.
mental note. That is a great idea for next 6.5.
And the pro tip, you can freeze pickle juice, and that adds to your cooling capacity as well.
Well, I did come up with some great ideas. I will say this, my coolers were cold the entire weekend,
Yeah.
which was fantastic. I'll tell you how I was able to do that here in a bit. But first, Hoptomic Rush, I'll give it a 4.5. This one was 4.25. Decent. It was an easy drinker. It worked pretty well on the trip. We'll take a quick break. I'll tell you how we fared on day 2 of fishing, as well as some of the cooler tips that we had. And I'll give you the overall takeover from the 3-day no food canoe trip that we went on over the weekend down the New River. It was a good time. We'll take a quick break. We'll play a tune. We'll come back. It's Brewsday Tuesday here on 105.3 The Bear. You should stick around.